Good evening, everybody, and welcome to St John's Parish Hall for the District 3 Deputies Hustings. Thank you all very much for coming. It's great to see that we've got you all crammed in and even people standing at the back. That's fantastic. I'm Katie Chang. I'm a journalist with ITV Channel Television here in Jersey, and I'll be chairing the event this evening. Now, what a night to be interested in politics, eh? The next couple of hours are set to be very interesting indeed, and come 9 o'clock, could lead to a whole new change on the political horizon. But enough about what's happening in Westminster. Hopefully you'll leave here tonight with more confidence in these candidates than the Conservative Party have in Boris Johnson. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, Jersey's elections have changed recently, and as opposed to the parish deputies that you elected last time, now it's more representative on of the numbers of people who live in each area. So we've got districts, and ours is made up of St Lawrence, St John and Trinity. So we've got candidates from all three parishes here today. We've got 4 seats to fill, and we've got 8 candidates to choose from. So in a moment, they'll each have 3 minutes to introduce themselves, and then you'll spend the next 2 hours listening how they're going to address the issues that matter to you, should they be elected. And the candidates have all agreed on the format. So we've got 1 minute to answer each question, and to ensure that everybody's given equal opportunity, this is going to be timed, and they'll be asked to stop if they go over. Sue, our parish secretary, is going to give a ding of the bell when our candidates have 15 seconds left, and then 2 dings when their time is up. So then they've got to... And speaking of time, because we've got 8 candidates and we want to get through as many questions as possible, I will ask you to keep your questions brief if that's all right. And between those candidates as well, we also have some members of the current Council of Ministers and some who are new to politics here. So just a reminder that this event is a hustings event. It's not an Ask the Ministers event. So if you've got any questions specifically for a person, I'll ask you to send them to them directly, because we want to make sure it's as democratic as possible and that everyone gets a fair chance to answer questions. And if I think the question's too focused on someone, I'll ask you maybe to just rephrase it slightly so that everybody gets a fair chance to answer it. So, yeah, I guess without further ado, let's get going. Has anybody got a question for our candidates, or should I start? I have been given a candidate.
Yes.
Oh, yes, of course. Terribly sorry. Let's begin. Okay, we'll start off with number 1, who is Hilary down at the end.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Hilary Jearn, and I would love the opportunity to work for you to make Jersey a fairer, more inclusive and sustainable place to live. If elected, I will use my passion, experience and influence to make a real difference. Making a difference is what drives me, and it's why I'm standing as an independent candidate. I grew up in St John and became interested in politics through my family, who taught me about the importance of giving back to our community, of making an impact and difference for good, with strong work ethics, and how to participate in a good debate that is respectful of everyone's opinions, especially the importance of listening. This inspired me to follow the path that I've been on for the last 20 years, working with and influencing international organisations and their member governments, including the United Nations, the World Bank and the European Union. I've worked for Oxfam and the Fair Trade Network, and now through my own business, encouraging countries to reduce inequality, protect the environment and create a sustainable future. I've monitored, scrutinised and influenced the European Union's budget, how the World Bank spends its funds, as well as trade, climate change, agriculture and international development policies. Giving my time locally, I'm Deputy Chair of Jersey's Young Adults Homeless charity JAF, an advisor to the Jersey Community Foundation, elected member of St John's Committee Rural and editor of St John's Parish magazine. Using this experience and knowledge while working collaboratively and building consensus, I believe I can make an impact. Policies must be values-led, evidence-based, and focus on our future for our younger generation. As a mum of 2, I know firsthand how vital it is that we devise and implement an education framework that focuses on problem-solving, critical thinking, building confidence and empathy, and reducing excessive testing. Protecting our environment is high on my agenda. We can do so much more, and we must do more to protect our island and play a role in achieving global goals. This includes accessing affordable, healthy food from farmers that are valued. We must address and improve the situation for housing in both the private and rental markets to stem the cost of living crisis. I want to see a strong, diverse economy that works for all, which supports small businesses, innovation, and pushes us to be a sustainable finance jurisdiction. I will prioritise delivering accessible primary health care and a new hospital, and I will work for a diverse and inclusive society that addresses the gender pay gap, supports parents' return to work, and further adoption of the living wage. I want to support and preserve parish life as it enhances our community. I want to see the constituency's 4 deputies and 3 constables working together to establish a space for constructive, collaborative exchanges of ideas. I promise to listen to you and to be your voice. I'm accessible, approachable, constructive, and I will collaborate with all states members to develop impactful policies. Please consider voting for me to help deliver a fresh approach to politics that is built on experience and passion. Thank you.
And Hugh.
Thank you. Well, yes, as you know, my name is Hugh Raymond. I must admit that what is it they always say? It's better to talk to an audience that you don't know. It's pleasurable to see so many people in the audience that I do know, so I'm sure that people will be sort of correcting me where I went wrong in what I've said to you. It's very difficult to speak to the left and to the right, but it's great to see so many people here. As you probably know, the closest, well, as far as we're concerned, the work I've done with one of the closest parishes has this one. We met here week after week when I was president of the Honorary Police, and so I know the area very well, and know your area very well. And going back, your chef is still the same as it was when I was the president of the Honorary Police Association. So it was a pleasure to be able to see that St John's and St Lawrence were coming together with us. The only problem I have with it takes away one's responsibility, which I have been doing over the last 4 years and learning about Jersey, because as you probably know, I'm not what we would say as a Jerseyman. I came here sort of 25 years ago to basically retire, but I got involved in a lot of things, basically starting with the Honorary Police. I was 18 years in Trinity, and then moved on to become the president of the Honorary Police Association. I then got into politics and started to find all sorts of different things. It is vastly different to politics in the UK. But the one thing I just will say is, and actually carrying on from Hillary, I think that we're going to struggle to be able to do things within government and look after the 3 parishes. And I think you brought it out very well, that all of us are very concerned that we're here to represent you, the 3 parishes. But the main thing is, and the one thing I will vehemently actually go for, is that we mustn't lose the parish system. It works, the constables, the Honorary Police Association. I do not want to see that go. If it's not broken, why should we try and mend it? And I think that we have quite a few people in the row waiting, not in your rows, but in the row of trying to sort of, let's say, put the constables in the back seat, and that must not happen. So therefore, I'm very much coming down the route of protecting the 3 parishes, and I hopefully can provide the support that I've given to both Trinity and now to St John's and St Lawrence, because I think it's vital that we keep all the parishes together and make sure that we do a good job of looking after you. And I'm delighted to be here and see so many smiling faces. I have to say, I was a bit surprised as to see who I was going to see, especially sitting in the front seats, but thank you very much indeed.
And Mary next.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming here this evening to listen to us. Also thanks to all my supporters and helpers across the 3 parishes of St Lawrence, Trinity and St John. And I'd like to say a special thanks to my 2 young, great supporters, Sam and Ben, who you may have seen bicycling around St John this weekend on their bicycles, giving out my brochure. I'm trying to say something different from what is in my brochure, because you'll be able to see that in the next few days. It'll be coming round to all of you. In this district, you have a very, very clear choice. There are 3 alliance candidates here, one of whom has been the Chief Minister for the last 4 years. You also have 5 independents. Do you want more of the same alliance leadership, or do you want something new? My name is Mary Venturini, and I am one of the new independent candidates. My roots go back in this parish to the arrival of my grandmother in the 1920s. I came back to live in St John's about 20 years ago. Before that, I established and ran the largest English language publishing company in Rome when I lived there with my husband, bringing up a young family. I know about doing business in a very competitive and very difficult environment, and in a foreign language. My recent experience in Jersey has been analysing the new hospital project. This has brought me into contact with almost every other sphere of island life. There is absolutely no doubt we need a new hospital, but I am against the one this alliance government is pushing through at any cost. So let's turn to some of the issues: money and taxes. We are being asked to pay over £804 million for the new hospital. We know that it could be built for less. This enormous expense will probably mean more taxes in the future, whatever this government tells us. The employment crisis. All sectors, healthcare, hospitality, building, finance, farming, are finding it difficult to get staff right now. We will have to bring in 1,000 new workers for the new hospital. Where will they live? Housing crisis. We are going to have to re-examine the whole housing chain, from substandard rental properties to the huge multi-million houses left empty for long periods. Climate crisis. We know that we have a climate emergency, but in just one infrastructure project, the present government wants to bulldoze through the People's Park up to Tower Road and beyond. What waste, what devastation, what human cost. Thank you very much.
And next, Andy.
Hello, everyone, and thank you to the Constable and the parishioners of St John for allowing us to hold our hustings here this evening. My name is Andy Howell, and I'm standing as an independent candidate for deputy for the new District 3, and I would really appreciate your vote on the 22nd of June. I feel very fortunate to have lived in Jersey for the last 40 years. I know this doesn't mean I qualify as a Jersey bean, but nevertheless, I regard Jersey as my home. We've brought up our family here, and I really care about Jersey and all aspects of our island life. People, environment, traditions. I'm standing for election because I think we need a fresh start. We need new states members, and I would love to be one of them. I want to be part of a states assembly that listens to islanders and is open, transparent, and accountable. I will work collaboratively and with integrity to make sensible and financially sound decisions, ensuring that we do not waste taxpayers' money and that we live within our means. I do not think the island should be in debt. I want to address the cost of housing. As a retired dentist and wife of a GP, I am passionate about making positive change within our healthcare system, reducing bureaucracy. Our future hospital should not cost £804.5 million. It needs to be properly future-proofed and provide all the services and facilities that we need. Current plans need to be revisited. Too much is missing. Islanders need certainty as to where they will receive their care. But it's not about a building, it's about the staff. We need to be able to attract and retain our wonderful frontline staff. We need to understand why morale is so low by listening to them and making changes accordingly. They need to be cherished and empowered to do their jobs. Excellent patient care, coupled with kindness and compassion, has to be the number one priority. As the electorate, you have to decide. Do you wish to continue with the present government, or do you think change should happen? I think we need positive change and a different way forward. I believe everyone matters. I'm approachable, hardworking, and will value your input. I think together we can put islanders at the heart of decision making. But the only way I can make a difference is if I get elected on the June the 22nd. So please, if you live in St John, St Lawrence or Trinity, vote for me. Thank you so much.
Great, and next we come down to Elaine.
Stand up so I can see. Good evening. My name's Elaine Miller, and I'm standing as an independent candidate. I've really enjoyed getting to know St Lawrence in the last few weeks and meeting many of you to talk about your concerns. It's really good to see so many of you here tonight, so thank you for coming. I'm an advocate, and I've been a lawyer for 35 years. I have a track record of success in my career. I've been a director at one of our biggest banks, and a lawyer and a partner at one of our biggest law firms. For the last 7 years, I was the Viscount, and I was the first woman to be appointed to that office. By holding those roles, I have learned skills that are key for a States member. I can make sense of complex information. I am good at finding solutions to problems, and I know how to make sensible decisions. And that's what I'm offering you now. Someone who's capable, someone who can get things done, and who will work hard to deliver positive and effective outcomes for the 3 parishes and for the island as a whole. I believe I can make a real and immediate contribution to the States Assembly. My manifesto focused on 3 main areas. First, business. Although we need to preserve the financial services industry, the majority of businesses in Jersey employ fewer than 5 people. Small business is the lifeblood of every community, and we must do more to support them by minimising unnecessary red tape. There is a strong business community in St John, from the village to the commercial centre and all round the parish, and we must do more to help them thrive. Second, health and social care. Our health and care professionals should have the resources and facilities that they need to provide a high standard of care. If the new care model is to work, it needs committed funding and people, and our health professionals need to provide more input now. We must now focus on building a new hospital that meets the island's needs. Third, housing. Clearly, there's work to be done, and many of you have told me about your concerns with housing and its impact on your families. We need to look for sensible ways to increase our housing stock. We need a fair deal for landlords and tenants, and we need to find help to buy schemes that work for Jersey. But to do that, we need to understand our current and future demands for housing, and to do that, we need a clear, properly considered strategy on population. Like many of you, I would also like to see more control and transparency in government spending. I was responsible for public funds as a Viscount. I took that responsibility seriously and monitored funds carefully. But I discovered that government systems do not result in value for money. That has to change. There must be clear responsibility for public spending, and individuals must be held to account for management of budgets. I do hope that you will give me one of your votes. I will not let you down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next we have Kirsten.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming out, despite the rain. Thank you indeed for coming. I'm going to start by introducing myself. I'm Kirsten Morell, and all of my politics, all of my thinking effectively comes from the idea that Jersey is a wonderful place. I'm really lucky to live here. I was born here, and it's incredible to be here. But there's a sad truth about Jersey, and that's that it's becoming more and more difficult to stay here. And some of you will have known, because I've spoken to you on the doorsteps already. I'm one of 8 first cousins. And of those 8 first cousins, I'm the only one who's left here. Well, actually, one of them leaves in August, but that would be it. So of those 8 first cousins, all of us with degrees, I'm the only one left standing. Jersey cannot continue like that. That's not possible. That's an island which doesn't have a very strong future. And it really worries me, because this is a wonderful island, and I want it to continue like that. And sometimes I think, because we've had 70 years of success, to be honest with you, since the 1950s, Jersey has gotten better and better and better in terms of material gain. That's been fantastic. but I think it's also perhaps clouded us to the vulnerability that we have, because we are a tiny island. And actually COVID showed us that. Do we shut the gates? Do we open them? How do we negotiate all of this? And I want us to focus on helping Jersey through today's challenges and the future, building a prosperous future for all of us. To me, that's absolutely vital. We've heard today already, collaboration is so important. I've spent 4 years in the States. I've worked as a scrutiny chair and an assistant minister. And what I've seen is a divided chamber. The States never used to be like that. When it was before ministerial government, the States was about working together. There were 52 people then, and the idea was that they worked together. They brought their minds together to come up with the solutions. I don't doubt they didn't always get it right. There's no question about that. But the point was, it wasn't divided. Today we have a divisive system, and it's one that I don't like. It's one that doesn't really work properly for us. But what I offer you is someone who's bright, who's hardworking, and who believes in collaboration and working together, no matter who the people are that I'm working with. If they want to do the best for Jersey, then I will work with them. And that's where I come from. It's interesting because what I will say is I don't subscribe to an ideology. I think ideologies mean that you don't find the practical, common sense solutions. That worries me. But to say I don't subscribe to an ideology doesn't mean I don't have beliefs. I believe in Jersey's enterprising spirit and our resourcefulness. I believe in Jersey balancing the economic needs of our community with the environment to ensure that we have a future. And I believe that I can continue to serve this island for all of you in this larger district of St. John, St. Lawrence and Trinity. And I do hope that you will give me the opportunity to do that over the coming 4 years. Thank you very, very much.
Gregory.
I don't know what to say. But I've got a fantastic speech here, but of course we've heard so much from the other candidates. It's a little bit difficult to choose. First thing, actually, I completely agree with Deputy Morel. It was a very divisive assembly. This is not right. This is not what we should have in Jersey. We are just too small a place to start dividing ourselves and fighting against each other. So if we can change that next term, this is definitely something we should do. The other thing is that the first thing I would do if I was elected again is to reverse the electoral reform. I don't think it is right that you now have no choice in your own deputy for your own parish and that you don't have an island-wide vote to put a senator in the government. I don't think that is right, and it is the second thing I would do in the assembly. We've been very busy. I was a member of 2 ministries, 20 panels, committees and boards, and we've worked reasonably hard. What we've done this time, which was pretty new for Jersey, was that we started all the generational projects. We started all the stuff that everybody had left by the wayside because you get them started. And you don't get to cut the ribbon in front of the JEP because that's in 2-3 terms from you. And somebody else is going to say, oh, look, 4th Regent, redone. No, we started the regeneration of 4th Regent. We started the regeneration of Saint-Hélier. We started the refinancing of states' pensions. We started the biggest home building project in Jersey, 5,000 homes, and that's just the state's side. We started that. We're not getting any front page. This will be for next term or the term after that, when housing is solved. But we had to start it, we had to do it. And we are the government. We got a planning permission for the hospital. The hospital is the most advanced that it's been in 12 years. We've been discussing this for 12 years. We know we need it so desperately for 12 years. And now we're almost there. We're absolutely almost there. And the fantastic thing is that we're getting it for free. We're not getting it with more taxes. We're letting our money work for us. We have the biggest reserves in our history, 1.2 billion pounds in cash in the bank. And if we just let it work, it will pay for the hospital. We will not have to ask you for £1 in tax. I think we've done okay. Oh, and COVID, of course.
Right, good evening, everybody. So for those who don't know me, and I'm really glad to follow Gregory, I'm John Lafondre, and it was 16 and a half years ago that I was first elected. It's been a privilege to serve as a deputy, as a senator, and more recently as chief minister. The last few years have been unprecedented. With Brexit, COVID, and now the impact of Ukraine, it's taken calm, tough decision-making, resilience, experience, and total commitment to lead the government through this time. While some people sadly suffered loss and others still face difficulties, Jersey has emerged in a strong position. And with thousands of hours spent dealing with the pandemic for 2.25 years, it was inevitable that work would slow on other projects. Now, recently, some people have been saying inflammatory things like, this government has been a disaster and has done nothing. Well, we protected lives, we protected businesses and livelihoods. We kept the schools open longer than almost anywhere else. If this was a disaster, then I wear that label with pride. If having a fantastic vaccination programme, having a hugely successful Spend Local scheme, which attracted international attention, was a disaster, then I wear that label with pride. If coming out of the worst global pandemic that certainly we have ever seen in my lifetime, in the sound financial condition we are in with a surplus last year of £59 million and higher reserves, if that was a disaster, then I wear that label with pride. I have no time for nasty, petty politics. I try to be positive and constructive to secure a positive future for Jersey. And I've been encouraged and actually humbled by the wide range of people who have thanked me personally for our work throughout COVID, and I'm seeking re-election to continue to drive forward work already started in other areas. We have saved over £200 million in our time that is now being used to improve areas that have not been supported for years. There have been too many short-term, knee-jerk decisions in the past. We've implemented many long-term decisions which will, over time, see sustainable improvements in health, education, sport, culture, and the arts. We've increased, for example, investment into mental health by £10 million a year. There has been improvement, but we need to focus even more on access to support, delivery, and outcomes. Plans in progress will deliver thousands of homes over the next few years. There is hope, but it requires continued focus and persistence. Work has started on Fort Regent, finally, and the new tech fund will help grow the digital economy. We live in an increasingly complex and rapidly changing world. It will take experienced politicians as well as new faces to grapple these challenges, present Jersey on a global scale, and hit the ground running. And I hope you recognise the value of my experience and consider me one of your 4 votes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. So we've heard from our candidates, let them introduce ourselves. Now we have our roving microphone ready and raring to go. Who would like to kick us off with the first question? Go on then.
Thank you. Martin Whitley. I'm an elected member of the St John Committee Rural. Now, as a committee, we spend many, many hours reading volumes of the Interim Island Plan. And there's a lot that we could ask questions on there, not least about first-time buyers and homes for our children. However, there's one line in it which made reference to a decoupling from any population policy. So my question is, how would you support the island in ensuring we're building homes for the future of our own families, recognising we do need to bring skills in? But how can we do this without a population policy? So my question really is about, what are you going to do about it? Thank you.
If we start off with Hilary Jen.
Yes, thank you, Martin. And I was with you grappling those exact questions at the Committee Rural, so thank you for that question. I think it's absolutely key that we do have a population policy, and actually one that really looks at this in a serious way, not just a few nice words on a piece of paper, but actually really takes into consideration and weighs up that balance between needing to fill those skills gaps that we're seeing, and we're seeing that. We've seen it in the newspaper recently. We're seeing it with our hospitality, with the health sector, and with the education sector, there is jobs that are seriously needed. So we do need to have skills gaps, but we also need to balance that with actually limiting the amount of people that come to this island, because we do see, and this is decades that we've been seeing this rampant growth with housing costs, traffic congestion, long hospital waiting. So I think that should be number one priority when getting into the government, and I would like to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and next up, can we have Hugh Raymond's response, please?
Yes, thank you. That's a very interesting question. 25 years I spent myself as I ended up being in charge of a fairly large building society. And that question was being asked all the time. What scares me, and it does scare me to death, we talk about building 5,000 homes, but will there be the population to use those homes in 5-10 years' time? My fear is, unless you get the population policy right, and you get the fact that there is places to come to work, the 5,000 homes will start to disappear. You won't need them. And I've seen it happen. And one of the biggest problems that hits anything is inflation and interest rates. You only have to go back to 1985 when interest rates went to 15%. And always remember about one thing. The lenders don't look after the borrowers, they look after the lenders. And the first thing they do is repossess. I've seen it, and I am worried and very, very concerned about where Jersey is going if it doesn't sort itself on the population policy with regards to housing and schools.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Mary Venturini.
There is a direct relationship between housing and population. I have heard so many times in the last 3 or 4 months of young people who are leaving the island because they can't find accommodation. And this applies across the whole of the population in Jersey: Portuguese, Polish, Romanians, our own islanders are all thinking about leaving the island. Now, on one side, we are having houses coming on stream, particularly in St Helier, and on the other side, we have got people leaving the island. Now, this could be quite a serious crisis in the next few years. Population is something that is a bit like water. It comes and it goes. But there is a serious problem of not being able to get workers in the island, and I have already said that in my introduction, and I've heard this across every single sector.
Andy Owl.
I think that, first of all, we need the evidence of who is actually here. We need the figures. So whether we do that through the parishes or we do it through the census, but we need, first of all, to know what we're dealing with. And then we need to know if people are thinking of staying or thinking of going. We can't stop people coming in completely because we need new blood. But I think we should be doing all we can to encourage our youngsters to stay in Jersey in the first place. So we need to find ways that they can find homes to buy, and we might need to help them subsidise their homes, like the Trinity scheme. I'm sure, like other, St John's has got one, and St Lawrence. We need to be able to keep our youngsters because they're our lifeblood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Elaine Miller.
Well, as I've just said, I agree, Martin, that I think we do have to have a population policy. We can't plan for the future without understanding what our needs are now, what our needs are in the future. And we need to think about both the people who live here, who are born here, who will stay here as permanent residents, the type of people we want to come in as permanent residents, but we also need to think about people who will come in on a seasonal basis, whether that's hospitality or farming. And we need to make sure that those people can also be given adequate and satisfactory accommodation that does not treat them like second-class citizens. Everybody must have adequate and fair housing, and I think that really is essential. I think we need to prioritise what we do about local people. Like everybody else, lots of people have told me about their children leaving, their grandchildren leaving the island, and that has to stop. We need to be training people to do jobs locally. So we need to be making sure we have local people to go into jobs. We need to stop bringing people in from England or the UK or Scotland if we don't have to. I'm conscious of a Scottish accent. And it's not just about buying, it's about renting as well. Rents are also out of control, and that needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you very much. And Kirsten Morell.
Thank you, Martin, for the question. I was on the scrutiny panel that told the Environment Minister he shouldn't go ahead with the Ridging Island plan before the general election, that he should postpone it, precisely because there's no census information in there and there's no population policy associated with it. There is now something of a population policy. There's the first germs of a population policy. But the truth is population, and I want Jersey to be able to reach that level of having a stable population where it's no longer growing. But to reach that level of the stable population, we've got to do some fundamental work. It's not just about a population policy. It's about understanding that currently our social security system and our tax system are entirely based on increasing our population. So if we want to reach a level where there is no further population growth or no significant population growth, we need to revise our tax system and we need to revise our social security system. And until we do that work, any population policy we have is short of being a population policy, and that's the work that I really want to do. That's the work that the island needs to get done, because we need to move on from tax and social security that was designed in the 1960s to a 21st century system.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is it not possible to speak closer to the microphones, because I can't really hear some of you people down here talking. I can hear the lady with the bottom, the lady with the glasses there, and the one next to you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, if we could all speak into our microphones directly, that would be great. And Gregory Guida.
Yes, please let us know. Oh, it seems to be working now. But yes, do let us know if you can't hear us. First thing is that, of course, the island plan was absolutely desperate because we knew that we had a housing crisis. So we absolutely had to do an island plan and put in the island plan all the building that we needed to do. And that's why we couldn't wait for the census. This census is actually quite special because it's probably the last one you'll ever see. The idea is that there should be enough data within the government now to never need a census again. And that means that we will be able to react in real time to the need of the population. And that's really, really good. To get there, we have to put up to date a computer system that is antediluvian. It's about 20, 25 years old. We've made great strides, but there's still a lot to do. We've put up the tools to control population. So those exist. We are back to work permits. And of course, Brexit gave us quite a hand in limiting the amount of Europeans that can freely come to the island. And of course, the last and most important thing is that we need to grow our own people. We need to stabilize the population. But to do that, we will need a few years.
Okay, thank you very much. And John Lafondre.
Yes, thanks. It is actually the first piece of work I set going, which says how long it's been complicated. Can you hear me? Okay. Apologies, that was going to come to my time now. But what we actually found in this piece of work we did, that the controls that were purportedly in place didn't work. We could have set any target you liked, any number you'd have liked, it would have been completely meaningless. And that's where we've done a lot of work. Bear in mind we lost 2 years because of COVID. Gregory's right. Part of that is getting new systems in place, getting the data right, and then getting the controls in place. But otherwise, we don't even know exactly who lives where at this stage. And the systems don't talk to each other. That's why it's taken so long. We're about halfway through the process. There is something labelled a population policy. It sets a whole range of principles down. It's been approved by the Assembly. Data and security systems are the programme for now, and then further legislation to come through later this year. That will give the framework of what we need. It's taken time, but it's a very complicated subject, and you can't just close the doors immediately, by the way.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your comment there as well. Yes, if we can all make sure that we speak into the microphone so everyone can hear us, and the people who are watching at home later can also hear us all. Okay, next question. I think we saw was there a chap in the hallway with his hand up earlier?
Hello, my name is Miguel Arrea. I'm a resident of St John, have been since '95. Housing is obviously the big issue, and some of you have talked about intervening in the private market. I think some of you talked about controlling rents. Can each of you comment on that? And could you please give your views on what you think the consequences would be that for the market in terms of supply?
Thank you very much. If we start with Hugh Raymond, please. We'll go down in order, don't we?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. I'm not quite sure where we start. Looking after rents is one of the most difficult things you do, whether it's the private landlord or whether it's us as the owner of some of the properties. There is no doubt that we've got to make sure that the rents being given are sufficient for people to stay here. It worries me again that this is another issue that is pushing people away because people just cannot afford to stay here. We have to bring something in, and I think the parishes will play a big part in this going forward because, as I said, we've got it in Trinity, you've got yours here, but we just don't have enough rented property that we can control. And one of the biggest things about rented property, and dare I say it, in the UK, it's controlled by the local authority. We are almost like a little local authority. We should be able to control it. And I think that we have to look at ways of making sure that that works.
Thank you very much. And Mary Venturini, please.
I think this is a minefield about controlling rents and controlling standards in housing. I have had people talking to me today very worried about this, both on the side of the tenants and on the side of the landlords. On the side of the tenants, I think that good quality and controlled rents are something that we should be looking at. I think the danger about this on the other side is that people who own property, maybe property that they've invested in as savings, perhaps long ago, are finding that it is quite difficult to pay for the repairs, not the repairs, the higher standards of the property as they are now required. I think this needs a great deal of thought, that people are looked after well in the housing, but that equally the landlords are not being driven out of the market.
Thank you very much. And Andy Howell.
Yes, I think I support very much the parish initiatives keeping rents low for elderly people and all the rest of the community. The Jersey Homes Trust, and whose purpose is to provide decent, affordable, social rented homes for people of Jersey, and Andium Homes. I think in the private sector, people choose to go and rent where they can. They accept the rent. There is a lease that they have, and I think they should, that is both sides. You have to be mindful of the tenant, but also we need the landlords to be able to rent the property. We do need private rental property as well as social housing, and they're both very important, but it's important, we have to try to keep the rents as low as possible if we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Elaine Miller.
Hello, Miguel. I don't agree that we can cap or control private sector rents. I think that's something that the market itself has to evolve. I was making the point earlier that rent is very expensive in Jersey. I do think that we should break the link between social housing and private sector rents. As I understand it, social rents are set at about 80% of the private market. I don't fully understand how that works, but I think we need to be able to we should be able to set social rents independently of the private sector. We need landlords in the market. We need to be careful that we're not pushing them out. But I think equally, we need to be sure that landlords are not exploiting the situation. And I think it's just about fairness. I said we need a fair deal between landlords and tenants, and it's trying to encourage landlords to set rents fairly that people can afford in the island. So thank you.
And Kirsten Morrell.
Thank you. Thank you, and a really interesting question. It's interesting. Rents in Jersey are high, but private landlords, operate in one of the most competitive marketplaces in the island. There are thousands of private landlords, and they're all going for the same pool of tenants. It's also interesting because rents, I believe, are rising at about 1% a year, which is far below inflation, and suggests that they're not, flying up in the same way that house prices are. I think rent caps, when you look around, and I think we're on about the third generation of rent caps now around places like Berlin, New York City, etc. I think time and again they've been proven that they don't actually work, that they have unintended consequences, such as we mentioned, landlords pulling out of the market, and therefore the availability of apartments drying up. But what I think we can do, and what Treasury really should be doing, is looking at income tax rental relief. If you're paying rent, then you can be getting tax relief on that. There is no reason why that should not happen, and I believe the government has a duty to help in that area.
Thank you. And Gregory Guida.
So many subjects. I'll try to go very quickly. Standards in renting are already controlled. There's already a law, and you can get done if your standards are not up to scratch. There was a lot of talk about registering landlords during this term, and I've always been against that because basically it was just a way of making them pay for the controls, and that might not be completely right. I think the market should remain open, and the best way to influence the market is to change the offer and the demand. And again, building and giving the opportunity to build is the best way to influence the market. Andium will be, out of the 5,000 homes that I mentioned, Andium will be building 3,000. That's 50% more than they have, and that's all social housing. That's all very affordable housing. The other 2,000 that the government are launching are first-time buyers, so those will also be helped. So housing will become much more affordable.
Thank you very much. And John Lafondre.
Thanks. Yes, I'm actually a trustee, or still a trustee of the Vote Housing Trust. So one of our focuses is providing housing. We've got tenants moving into the second phase of Troy Court, which we've been down, Grand Vaux Court now, which is actually a fabulous scheme. But just so to give the indication, though, I do not favour interfering in the private sector market. Usually, history has shown that it generates unintended consequences. In the 70s and the 60s, I think people started charging ingoing for all sorts of things. We don't want to go there. We've talked about, I think it is fundamentally around the supply and demand. Gregory's already identified the thousands of units that we're talking about. Once you've actually got those in the pipeline, I'm sure hopefully it'll come up separately, but one of the reasons we're demolishing Cyril and Markham is ultimately that will lead to releasing brownfield sites as well. Once you get that supply into the pipeline, then you can realistically have the affordable housing products as well, which are being designed. There's been a release actually about 4 weeks ago about a kite mark and about the Jersey Homes Promise. So there is hope, as we keep saying, but it's got to require some persistence and focus over the next 5 years.
Thank you very much. Sorry. And Hilary Jeanne.
Thank you. I think it's very important that we supplement and expand the social rental housing and break that link with the private sector, that 80%, so break the link of the rent. I think that's really key. As Deputy Chair of JAF, the Young Homelessness Charity, we really see that young adults who are working are actually homeless because they cannot even afford to get on the rental market. So we really need to expand that social rental homes. I'm not in favour of capping the private market, but I think it's important that there is a landlord registration scheme. This is not the same as the licensing scheme. This will be very different, but it will help those to identify and see, the kind of range of rents that have been that are being put out there on the market, and to also the rent control tribunal. Is important to put that back. I know that it's been put to the side for now, but I think it has to be there to control excessive rent rises and to ensure that there is high health and safety standards, and to continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We have a question here from the gentleman in the blue jumper, please, Martin.
I don't know if I need another mic, but anyway, ladies and gentlemen, about 3 weeks ago, Boris Johnson announced that he was going to eradicate 90,000 civil servants to cut costs. We in Jersey, we've got far too many civil servants. Would you agree? Far too many.
And what's your question, sir, please?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Anyway.
What's your question, sir? Sorry.
And furthermore, the disappointing thing I find over here is that in many aspects, the civil servants have got more power than our politicians. And this is... And so, what I'd like to see is that our politicians have far more power, because they are too soft in my ideas, all right?
And what's your question for the candidates then, sir?
My question is, do they agree with my views or not?
Sounds like
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Mary Venturini.
I love that question. Thank you very much. One of the things that I have been hearing as I go around is that there is a heavy weight of bureaucracy. I think that is the problem. If any of us wants to open a bank account in this island, the things that we have to go through are astronomical. The paperwork that we have to provide is absolutely mind-boggling. No, I'm coming to the civil servant. Yes, I am. I'll come straight away to the civil servants. I have heard, and I hope it is correct, that in the communications department, there are something like 25 people. Now, 25 people in a communications department for a small island is way off the mark. There shouldn't be more than about 4 or 5 to handle the government's communication. I will end there.
And Andy Howell.
I'd like to say thank you for the question. I'd also like to say to this gentleman to your left that we really respect the work that many of the civil servants do in the island, but I do think we have got too many. It was very sad that the previous Chief Executive Officer permanent said he was coming to economise, so a lot of people had to reapply for their jobs. They lost thousands and thousands of pounds, and now we hear that there are 800 more civil servants than when he came. And I think that is not right for this island. And I think we need to decrease bureaucracy, not on a personal level, but for the island. And we need to get back to empowering the people and doing things simply like we do it in Jersey. Thank you.
And Elaine Miller.
I've spent the last 7 years in the public service, and I worked very hard with a very small department. And what I would say is that there are large numbers of public servants who are working very, very hard. They don't have enough staff in some departments. The hospital has many, many vacancies, teaching, social work. There are some critical areas where we simply don't have enough civil servants. There has been a failure of leadership in the civil service. I think we have become very top-heavy. I agree. We have Mr. Parker brought in a large number of very highly paid directors and director generals. Whether we need those people, I don't know, but I do think we need to review it, and we need to focus on the front line and making sure that we have people on the front line, because those people are already working very hard and they're not well paid, and they haven't had a sensible pay rise for years, because I've seen that with my staff and personally. But yes, there is room to review and cut numbers.
And Kirsten Morel.
Thank you, and fantastic question. It was, and it's something that has been on my mind since before I was elected. But I know, and I'm looking around the room, and I know that there are civil servants in this room who work incredibly hard, and civil servants who played a huge role in getting us through COVID. Because when we talk about civil servants, we're also talking about nurses. We're also talking about teachers and doctors. It's not all just management. We tend to build a picture in our heads of it just being management and lots of management pushing paper, etc. And that's not entirely a fair picture of what the civil service is. The civil service touches our lives in many good ways. It has become top-heavy. There's no question. We've got names like Director General. Where did that come from? That's ridiculous. That places them above the politicians. And your question about power is absolutely correct. P1 2018, which we were warned about, it handed power to a civil service and away from politicians. That was wrong. We, as politicians, need to be taking that power back, because we're the ones who are elected. Civil servants are not elected, and that's fundamentally important. And we need politicians who will stand up and regain that power. Thank you.
And Gregory Guida.
It looks very different from inside. It doesn't what it looks like from outside. The first thing, of course, is that it is right. The vast majority of our civil servants are frontline personnel. They're teachers, they're nurses, they're doctors, they're gardeners, they fix roads, they have all sorts of jobs. And we have just spent 4 years cutting down the jobs of the ones that were in management to invest more in the ones that were in the front line. And they all hurt. And if you were in that role, you would find this question very odd, because the last 4 years really, really hurt them. So that has been done. And I would almost say, in fact, certainly for Home Affairs, I would absolutely say that we need to reverse it. That all my departments on Home Affairs have been squeezed to the absolute limit, and they need more people. So it may feel like that, but I assure you that it really is not the same from the inside.
Thank you very much, Anne. John Lafondre.
Yeah, thanks. No, it is complicated, actually, and although the headline's been 800 part-time, in that number, a part-time person counts as one person. It's what we call full-time equivalent is the number you need. It's about 600 and something, can't remember the exact number. It was done at the end of last year. You may remember that COVID was going up, therefore 250 of that increase was contact tracing. We could, of course, have got rid of them, but there were other consequences. 200 of the extra number is doctors, nurses, and teachers, and social workers for whom we are crying out. That then leaves a balance, which, depending on your maths, might be another couple of hundred. Now, anybody in the financial services industry might be aware there's a thing called Moneyvale coming down the line. It's kind of a bit crucial to the entire future of the finance industry in the island. Well, funny enough, we need some resource in there, for example, to prepare for that, and that will be civil servants. So it is complicated. There's going to be 2,000 retiring in about the next 8 to 10 years. We need the IT systems in place to then take the efficiency that we need. That money is in place. That will take some time to put. So I agree with the principle, but it is complicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Hilary Jeanne.
As we've heard, civil servants encompasses many, many different kinds of jobs. I think where there is too heavy is at the top. And I think that does need to be looked at. I think second, also, there needs to be some succession planning where you get Jersey people in from the bottom and are able to see that they can work their way up to the top. So you don't bring people in from outside to fill those top places, but you actually have a succession, and you actually, the Jersey locals really see that they can get to the top in the future and are supported for that. Civil servants have done an excellent job the last few years. As a consultant, I was put into the sustainability and foresight team while half that team was taken for COVID. So I know that they worked very, very hard. And I had to fill in some of the gaps myself in those times. But where I see really is the need is that the politicians do need to take some power back and need to make sure that they actually take accountability and responsibility for making decisions. And that really rests with not only the ministers, but also the States Assembly as a whole. Thank you.
And Hugh Raymond.
Thank you. Continuing on that vein, I sit on a board. I'm the only one on the board as a politician, which is not building the hospital, but which is running the hospital. And I have to say, having sat on that board for the last 18 months, I have never seen so much bureaucracy which has had to make us employ people that we've got things right. If you're running a hospital, the health and the systems and the health and care of the people in the hospital, there's things coming in. And I don't want to go into it, but you could go in at great depth. Years ago, one person would push a trolley. You've now got 2 people having to push a trolley. You have to have somebody standing outside of a lift. It's incredible what's gone on, and I've seen it in the last 18 months. And it's going to get worse. We have to come back as politicians. And I totally agree with Hilary. We have to be much harder politicians in asking the questions where we're going and what we're trying to do for this island, because there is bureaucracy totally coming in, and there is, unfortunately, a lot more civil servants taking those posts. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Who wants to go next? Yes, in the back there. Lady at the back.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Judith Powell, and I live in St Lawrence, so I hope you won't hold that against me. I'd like to ask the candidates their views on inclusivity. And by inclusivity, I mean it's long been known that the turnout for elections has been poor, between 40 to 50% quite often. There is a huge chunk of people who live in this island, not island-born, who are of different nationalities, who've lived here, work here, and pay their taxes. They feel very excluded. I've spoken to them on many occasions. They feel that voting isn't for them. They don't understand it. Nobody's approached them, and they feel left out. We are missing a trick. So I would like your thoughts on that, please.
Okay, first off, we'll start with Andy Howell.
First off is me. Thank you very much for the question. We have some wonderful people who live on this island from all nationalities, and I do think we probably they're not included as much as they could be, because they almost like, in some ways, to be with each other, and the Portuguese like to do things with their friends, and probably the Polish do as well, and it's just a case of how we can include them. I know a lot of the signs now are in different languages, but I think probably we do need to do more to try to get them to be included. And it's also for the young people. We need to make the youth parliament has done a really good job for them, and they're being included a lot more, but we have got to consider lots of other people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Elaine Miller.
I agree, voting should be open to everyone on the island who meets the relevant criteria, which is over 16 and meets a residency qualification. I agree with you. There are communities who probably do feel excluded, and we need to do more to reach out to those communities, whether that's in writing, by radio advertising. I know government, the communications department, do try to do that, but we do need to do more. But it's all over. It's all age groups. I've met many people on the doorstep who've said, I don't vote. I've met people who've said, I'm not on the electoral roll because I don't want to do jury service, which particularly pains me because I used to run the jury service. So that's 2 civic duties that those people are ignoring by not participating. I'm not sure what the answer is. I think education's a big part of it. We need to try explaining to people why it's important that they vote, and to encourage people to come out and make their mark and make sure that they do vote and express a view, because if you don't vote, you can't really complain about what the result is at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kirsten Morell.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for an excellent question. It's one of the really hard questions that we've been trying to get to grips with for the last 4 years. And yes, there are no easy answers. But I think there are there's one simple principle that would really help encourage people to get involved. And that's if they felt that government was working for them. That, I think, is one of the real problems. And this speaks to the issue of bureaucracy. Because if it's a bureaucratic government, it feels like people are having to work hard to get their long-term care. People are having to work hard to get the benefit over this, or to understand what their rights are. And so whilst there's this bureaucratic beast, then people won't feel like government is working for them. So that's on the bureaucracy side. But the other side is us as politicians. We are here to work for you. I was elected 4 years ago to work for the people of St. Lawrence and the people of Jersey. And that's what I try to do. And I do that by making myself accessible. And you can contact me. People are contacting me all the time. And that shows that I am there. And I always hope that the bit of work that I do, working for them, means that they will go out and vote and they will feel included. So that's how I think it is, just working for you.
Thank you very much. And Gregory Guida.
Yes, I'm a little bit surprised. I've lived in 7 different countries. This is the last one, I hope. And I have not seen a more open community than in Jersey. I've not seen a more welcoming community than in Jersey. And I was in Guernsey before coming here. It's really, really open, and it has been. If you look at history, it has been for centuries. It's extraordinary finding people who said, oh, my grandfather came here in 790 as a laborer, and then was given a farm to operate, and then owned the farm, and then my family has been farmers for 3 generations. Well, 7 generations in that case. It's extraordinary. It's really, really special. So on one hand, we have this. This is a really, really inclusive island. And in the other hand, we have the fact that it doesn't really participate in the political life. And it's a shame, because this political life is actually, and I'm proof of it, unbelievably accessible. There's no other place in the world where it is that easy to come in front of you and ask you for a vote.
Thank you very much. John Le Fondre.
Yes, I don't have a solution to apathy, I'm afraid, because I think we see it's not just restricted to the communities you refer to. I will say that actually in this role, which is I had a little bit before, but in this role it's been fantastic. I've attended many community cultural events, for a better expression, whether it's Polish, Romanian, Portuguese. I think I've met the ambassadors from all three countries, actually, because they come over and they work with what they call the diaspora, the representatives of their country who are here. I think actually that might be one of the venues that we need to explore, is using, because they will know everybody, if that makes sense, or they should do, and then perhaps you can then build on that. There is an attempt at engagement. They do try and translate frequently the electoral documents and things like that. But frankly, when I was working away, I wasn't that interested in the local politics. Depends how far you're there. But the community engagement, in fact, some of the individuals I know from those communities do take part. How we deal with the overall apathy, I think there's a couple of comments there, but it is an uphill struggle.
Thank you very much. And Hilary Jeanne.
Thank you. So I'm in a bilingual family. My husband's Dutch, so I absolutely understand having that balance between many different different cultures and bringing those together. I've also lived in Belgium for 15 years, where we, as other nationalities, were allowed to not only run in the local elections, but also vote very quickly soon after we have registered. And that actually gave us a sense of belonging within Brussels. And that's something that I think could be explored. I know it has in the past, but I've seen it really work with us as as kind of expats within the Brussels community, that has really brought us together there. So that's really important, but also it's actually quite difficult to stand, even myself as a first-timer, how to find the time to balance my work with doing this, to ensure that I'm still bringing in an income while this is happening. How to actually, it's quite complicated, how to actually go about doing this. There was very little information really on how to do this. And accountability and honesty from politicians, I think, as I said before, my last question is the most important to get people less apathetic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Hugh Raymond.
Thank you. Sorry. I'm going to go off on just one particular aspect of it, and that's sport. We discovered, I was chairman of the Jersey Sports Council up until my election 4 years ago, and we were finding that the sports bodies were losing the people that we wanted to lose. We have gone out our way in the last 4 years. I think we have to start at the bottom, whether it's charitable organisations, whether it's sports clubs or whatever. But there has been a noticeable change with the number of people taking part that aren't just Jersey people. We have to encourage it from that upwards. And I'm really just taking one particular aspect of what I'm doing. And I have to say, I'm very pleased to see what's happening, whether it's football, cricket, and getting them involved in sports that they wouldn't normally have got involved with. And it is quite interesting, if you look through what they're doing, is to see what they are doing, because it has been an incredible journey over the last 4 years. And that is my point, but just basically going on the sporting side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary Venturini.
If we're talking about voting, I talked to a Portuguese man the other day, and I asked him if he was going to vote, and he said no. Was he registered? No. Would he vote in his own country? Oh, yes, he said. I talked to a Romanian woman the other day, and I asked her if she was going to vote, and she said she didn't have the residency qualifications, but that she really wanted to vote. Inclusivity, let's take it a bit further. How many of the arts at the moment concern are the foreign communities that are living in the island? Art House is doing an amazing job at the moment, and I would like to ask you all to look at the mural that is going up on the Normans building. It is called Home, and it is a symbolic of inclusivity or lack of it. And unfortunately, there is a lack of inclusivity. So I do ask you to look at that and think about that side too.
Thank you very much. I've asked you that one, haven't I? Okay, I was handed a written question at the start of this evening from a lady who isn't quite able to speak properly, so I'll ask that on her behalf, if that's okay. This is from Vilma Bartlett, who's from St John. She says, please may I ask, how do you all feel about PFAS, forever chemicals, being present in our water supplies on our island? And how would you be able to support the island going forward, knowing that some places in the world are now taking a zero-tolerance approach? And I'll start with Elaine Miller for that one, please.
Right. That's not something I know a great deal about, but clearly anything that involves pollution or corruption of our water supply is something that we have to stop. I'm not sure where PFOS comes from. Is it a fertiliser?
I think it's firefighting chemicals.
Foam, sorry, yes, you're right, Barbara. I think we just need to make sure that we are not doing anything. I always understood when I came to Jersey that we didn't even put salt down on the roads when it snowed because that affected the water table. And we were very, very protective about the water supply. I had borehole water until quite recently, and I know what the challenges are of having a water supply that can be sporadic and can go off for months on end. So yes, I think we just need to look at how we can correct any deficiencies, how we can stop chemicals going into our water table, preserve the water supply, and I think where people are on borehole, see how we can support people getting from borehole and onto mains water, because there is a cost, there's a huge effort to doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kirsten Morell.
Thank you. I don't know how many of you know much about PFAS and PFOS. These are chemicals which came over here from firefighting foam, but they're actually in all sorts of products that we have and use in our lives. They're incredibly dangerous. But of course, the danger was only found out after they entered our lives everywhere. Now, Jersey has a massive problem with this. And Jersey, I am sorry to say this, was sold down the river by its own government back in 2003, when we signed our rights away to the big chemical company, which I'm not even allowed to mention because of that deal, and we signed our rights away. As a result of that, we haven't been testing for PFAS in Jersey. We haven't been checking whether there are any kind of clusters, such as cancer clusters, in Jersey. As a result of this, this is wrong, and this needs to be rectified. I'm really pleased that the first steps are now being taken. We are beginning to test, and we are beginning to test people regularly. But it's something we've got to do, we've got to continue for generations to come, because unfortunately, Jersey is already polluted by PFAS, and that's not going to change.
Thank you very much. Gregory Guida.
PFAS is one of the chemicals that we've been using in the past 50, 60 years. It's one of many chemicals that we've been using in all sorts of products. When they started being used, we didn't have the precautionary principle. I'm not talking about Jersey, I'm talking about the entire world. So you tested your product, it didn't kill anybody, it didn't kill rats in a lab, and then that was considered enough. Very soon after that, in the 80s and the 90s, they decided that this was not good enough, and they started banning products. And we've banned, and again, I'm talking about the world, it's not just Jersey, we've banned thousands and thousands of products. But at that time, PFOS was all over the place. It is now found in rainwater, so it is absolutely everywhere. The tests to check whether somebody has more or less PFOS or PFAS in their bloodstream are extremely rare. Only about 2 labs in the world do them. So they're extremely rare, extremely expensive, and it's just become available now. And of course, we're taking advantage of that.
Okay, thank you very much. And John Lafondre.
Yeah, I don't actually know the lady in question, but I've actually been familiar with PFOS and PFAS probably since my father's time, because the saga started on his watch when the airport contaminated the water table in St. Juan's Bay. And it's what's called the historic plume, so I'm highly familiar with the subject. Actually working with Roland Hewlin of St. Peter's, we've got the health testing started for those residents affected. We've actually done, through John Young, a survey of the island for the contamination, and I'm hoping that a third part of that components of the difficulties we've been dealing with, which might draw an end to part of the saga, will be sorted before I finish my time as Chief Minister. Please note hope. But in my view, it's an issue that the polluters should be paying. That should be where we are. And then we've got to recognise that actually we, when I say we, the States Assembly actually messed up the water supply in the past, and it's never been properly resolved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hilary Jeanne.
Thanks. It's absolutely wrong that we've signed away our health for big companies. This should be for all chemicals, not just PFAS. So that's something that I think we should definitely resolve as quickly as possible, and really push that the polluter pays. I think it is specific to boreholes in St. Wands. I did take a tour around Jersey Water and saw how specific testing that they did all the time on our water supply. Whether they do it for PFAS, I don't know, but I think it's really important that we are constantly monitoring and that we are supporting Jersey Water to be the highest quality that we can, because of course water, not only for ourselves but also for our environment, and it goes into the food system, is key that we keep that quality as high as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hugh Raymond.
Yes, I very much didn't know, like other people have said, what PFAS or PFAS was. But having listened to the gentleman that the Chief Minister had mentioned, I discovered very much what was going on in St. Wands. And all I can really say is that we've just got to make sure that when we take on something, we know exactly what we're taking on. And I think in this particular case, and I didn't know it was 50 or 60 years ago, but my God, when you think about other things that we've taken on, which really we should be looking at as well, I think it's essential that we make sure that our water supply is absolutely clean, clear, and used for everybody. And I think that with this sort of chemical around, and I have to say now, having gone through it with the water suppliers, they are concerned about other things and other, dare I say it, things being put on fields that are affecting our water supply. So we have to be careful what we're using, how we use it, and make sure that it's the right thing for our water company.
Thank you very much. Mary Venturini.
I would like to ask people who have been in government why it takes so long to discover these things. It always comes from the public to provide the information. And in this case, in PFAS, it came from the public and not from the government agencies. And it's turning up in water as far across the island as the east. Now, let's go back a bit to asbestos. How long did it take that to be brought to the public attention? And what else is coming into this island that we don't know about? What about all the insulation that we're being told to put into our houses? What's that like? Is there anybody that controls the chemicals that come into this island and are used here? If not, there should be. And I think this is where it should start. It shouldn't have to be up to the public to bring these things out. It should be done by government in the first place. And that's what I would like to see in the future.
Yes, I'm really pleased that this issue has come up because people have been really badly affected in St. Wands, but they've had to push and push. But I think they should be banned completely in the future and now. I'm also concerned about the pesticides that we're putting on our fields, because I think we should be leaving Jersey better than we found it. And a lot of these pesticides are really awful. They're all seeping down into our water supply. Is something that we're going to need forever. And it has to be good water supply, and water supply that's not going to damage our health. I'm worried about the nitrates. That was a real problem when I think our children were young, because they were so high, the levels. And I think those are coming down a bit, but I think we have to work with the farmers to try to think very carefully what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. And any other questions? You had your hand up very quickly there, the gentleman in the purple jumper just here.
The WD isn't working tonight. With my metal knees and etc. I had too much to say, so I'm going to try and shorten it. Inclusivity. My main push was actually, and I mentioned this last time in St. Lawrence, was why haven't we got an inclusive government who work together in one assembly? It saves paperwork, it saves time, it saves the double reading, or some of the members do not have time to read. The planning laws are huge, massive. And I would like to come round to the members and say, how many of you have actually gone through it? Had the time to go through it, with all the other things you have. One assembly, if you're all in the same assembly, you learn together, You listen together, you learn together, you think of your ideas through together, and you come to a conclusion together. It's much more healthy. It's much more inclusive. It's not so divisive. I think the ministerial government, as far as I'm concerned, I fought against it when it came in. I tried to, went to all the meetings. And I just cannot see that it is the answer to this government. We have a small island. We can do it without ministerial government. In fact, I think it's turned us the other way around, and I think the island, the economy and cost of living for the general electorate has not improved and has, over the last 5 years plus, disastrously declined. Finally, personally, I believe that the ministerial system is speedily destroying the socio-economic balance of our island, whilst it blindly follows a short-termism, high-cost pathway.
Okay. What's your question, please, sir? Nice and concise.
Well, I believe we should... here it comes. Yeah. Should the present failing system of government, as far as I'm concerned, be outlawed immediately and changed before it causes any further serious damage?
Okay.
I'd like to see you all together in one
Okay.
assembly.
Kirsten Morell, do you agree with a ministerial government as the way Jersey's run?
No. Next question. Okay, it's a really important question. It's a really valid question because ministerial government was brought in order to make faster decisions. And I know there's a soon-to-be ex-politician standing at the back who has worked out that actually decisions are not being made any faster anymore. They're being taken just as long. So ministerial government does not work at that level. It's also massively divisive, as you said, sir. It has created two systems within government. And also, it means that the government no longer feels like it's part of the States Assembly. The government feels like it's separate and, if I dare say, superior to the States Assembly, which is completely the wrong way around. The States Assembly is superior to government. The government exists because the States Assembly allows it to exist. These are really important fundamental matters. And so for me, we do need to break through. Effectively, it means breaking the Troy Rule, allowing people to serve as ministerial committees, just so some people can continue to be called ministers because they like that, and ministerial committees, and people will have to serve on both scrutiny and government because, yes, we need to go back to the collegiate way that it was before because this doesn't work. Thank you.
Gregory Guida.
I agree. Basically, what Deputy Morell has said is just right. I'm not terribly fond of the ministerial system. I've seen the way that Guernsey and Jersey have dealt with COVID, for example, and every decision that was taken in Jersey was then opposed by the Assembly. And not opposed just for to win the opposition, but just to discuss it. And of course, to the public, it's horrible because you have one half of your Assembly that says one thing and the other half of the Assembly that says the other one. In Guernsey, the committees took their time. But when they came up with something, that was it. That was the will of the Assembly. The thing is, the politicians that we've had who are familiar with the committee system were not keen to go back. I've never lived it. I've never seen it. But I would really like to try. I would really like to try it. I think it would be simpler and it would make for a much, much more cohesive Assembly.
Thank you very much. John Lafondre.
I'll just go with whatever system actually works at the end of the day. The ministerial system has its advantages, but it was basically introduced a number of months, I think, before I first started back in 2005. I think there are issues. One's got to make sure within the system that we have that scrutiny doesn't become the opposition. It should be the critical friend. It's about working together. It is useful to have that challenge, but equally, sometimes it has turned more difficult. What I will also say is a note of caution. There are sometimes politicians who do jump in with both feet, don't actually do the research, don't actually understand what they're doing. And I know in the past we've had propositions which have either potentially could have caused a constitutional crisis, actually, if we hadn't sorted it out, or have asked members to do things which are unlawful. That's what the systems are there for, to give you advice and to actually do rational decisions. How that works, and my father's in the committee system, scrutiny is close to a committee system, council committee is actually almost a committee. So, yeah, you take your pick and you make your choice. Each have their benefits.
Thank you very much. Hilary Jeanne.
Thanks. It's quite telling that we've had the first three answers from people who've actually seen the system and actually saying it needs to be changed. So I think that definitely needs to be looked at and looked at fast in the next assembly. But we do need someone who actually makes decisions and takes that responsibility. And whether that's within the committee system with a chair taking that responsibility, or you have, again, this ministerial committee system, there has to be somebody that is held accountable, or people held accountable to their decisions, and making swift and clear and honest to the public of why they're making those decisions. I don't think political parties will help this. I think actually will make it even worse, because it will be more divisive, because there will be this opposition. We see this all over the world, that it becomes across the aisles, and about point scoring rather than actually being better for the community and for society as a whole. And that's ultimately what we should be as States Assembly, is working for the community as a whole and collaboratively together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hugh Raymond.
I think by the end of the table, we'll all be agreeing. I totally agree. I am assistant minister in 3 big departments, and I find it, other than those 3 departments, I know very little about what's going on. Just reading the 3 departments I'm assistant minister to is let's put it this way, it's quite frightening. The other thing is they tend to react against each other, the departments. And what you don't want to do is have a minister not knowing what's happening in another department. And I will criticise the Council of Ministers on this, in the sense that it didn't come out very clear. I have spent the last 4 years looking at education, sport and culture, health and social services, and infrastructure. If you go through that, infrastructure affects health and social services immensely, because most of the building and most of the work that's done by health and social services is done by infrastructure as well. I think there has to be a complete look over, and we have to get back to a system where everybody knows what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary Venturini.
If ministerial government is divisive, and there are 2 tiers created by this, just imagine what is going to happen in the future, the very near future, with parties. The parties are not going to be able to get a majority in the Assembly. Look what happened to Kirsten when he was labelled, got the wrong label. Look what chaos that's caused. That is just one thing. It is very clear that independents are going to probably hold the balance of power. Now, that doesn't seem to be right either. You've got fractioned parties, and we really do not know where we're going. And I think this is going to be very detrimental for the future of the island. And I would like to get rid of parties as quickly as possible, and all work for the good of the island.
Andy Howell.
I too want to work collaboratively for the good of Jersey. I don't want petty politics. I don't want ministerial government who will not listen to scrutiny. They should all be working together. I think we should go back to a committee system, perhaps have someone who's the chair of the committee, but I think more heads are better than one. And I think in the last 4 years, the decisions have been made by too few people who have ignored the people of Jersey, who have ignored the states of Jersey. And I think that has to change. And that's why I'm standing, because I think we need a much more collaborative states who really care for Jersey and not pettiness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Elaine Miller.
Yeah, well, quite a number of people that I've spoken to on the doorstep have told me that they don't like ministerial government. They feel it doesn't work well. They're particularly concerned that it focuses power in too few hands. And it also feeds back to your, I think it was your point earlier, sir, about perhaps not civil servants having too much influence over ministers not standing up. Whether you call it a committee or a department or a ministry, we do need some form of specialism or grouping of people who will focus on a particular area, because there's a vast amount of work to be done. I used to see the committee papers as Viscount, and there's a huge volume of information circulated to States members. So we do need people working together. We need people working collaboratively. I, like a few other people already, feel that party politics will only make that worse. We need people who will just engage in an agile way, flexible way, and find solutions that work for the island, and not spend hours arguing about party policy, nuances of party policy and ideology.
Thank you very much. Okay, the lady in, well, where are you, Martin? Sorry, the lady in the green cardigan at the back, if that's all right.
Hello, everybody. I live in St John, and I'm here tonight to make sure that I make the right decision. I've listened very carefully to you all, and my last question, I'm thinking it's coming to the end, my question is really going to be the decider on who gets my vote. Before I ask my question, I have to put it in context. I read a very good article in the JP. It was a 2-page article, and it was the fiscal stimulus budget. And I read it word for word, and it was really good. I agreed with a lot of the things that the money was going to be allocated to: scouts, halls, sports halls, charities, lots of good decisions. However, at the very end of the article, 980,000 had been allocated to the Warty Pig enclosure at Durham. I'll repeat that. 980,000 was allocated to the Warty Pig enclosure at Durham. Now, my father's in an old people's home, and they only have one night staff on, and they could really do with somebody else. My question is, of the people on the platform there, did you vote for that 980,000 to go to the Warty Pig enclosure? And for those who weren't there, what would your decision be? Would you allocate £980,000 to that project?
I'm afraid that question's a bit too specific to the current members of government rather than the other. I'm sorry.
Well, can I rephrase it then?
Yeah.
Is it a good idea? Is it a good idea? Although I support Durham and I know they do great work, but
So
is it a good idea?
Is it a good idea for government spending for charity projects in the island?
Not.
Would you like the? Yeah.
I know it's. I hadn't prepared this question before I got here, so but it really is important, because that's nearly £1 million, and so, you know, I feel that they should be able to answer the question in a roundabout way without divulging whether or not they actually tick the box.
Sorry, I was going to say, could I just say, no one in the States got to vote on specific projects. It was just, shall we have a fiscal stimulus fund? The States voted yes, and then Treasury decided where that money went. So nobody here got to vote on
a special panel was created.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you.
Well, yes, all right. Then. Can you understand why it upsets me? Because I think there are a lot of people in this room that maybe haven't read that article. And I've highlighted the fact that that has happened. And I really want my candidate, I want the person I vote to, not to make such silly decisions. So,
okay. Thank you very much for the question. We'll have to pass on that one, I'm afraid. But if you want to get in touch, I'm sure everybody will be willing to receive an email.
We have a chat at the end?
Yeah. Okay, can I ask the lady on the stage in the grey cardigan, if that's all right?
A lot of talk has been about climate emergency and so on. So what I'd like to understand from each of the candidates, and like that lady there, my vote depends upon it, what they practically will do on the island regarding renewable energy.
Okay, fantastic. We'll start with Gregory Guida. Thank you very much.
Well, the first thing that we've done, and that dates from decades ago, is that we actually only purchase renewable electricity. So we buy tidal power from France and nuclear power from France. Our electricity is already green. The second thing, that's actually quite important, and also it puts us ahead in terms of fighting climate change. The next step is to do some solar on the island, but because of the lack of space, solar is going, even if we covered every single roof on the island, it would probably be about 5% of our needs. So it's something that we can do, but it's almost a hobby. The next bit, and that's going to be quite interesting, is that there is a possibility for a large wind farm project in Jersey waters. But of course, not everybody agrees that we should have a large wind farm project in Jersey waters. However, given the little spat that we have with the French about our power supply, it would be quite nice to have a little bit of independence in that aspect.
Thank you very much. John Le Fondre.
That makes my life much easier because Gregory is also, as well as Home Affairs Minister, is also Assistant Minister for Planning and Environment, the crucial thing on the environment, and has made a speciality of the dealing with the climate emergency side. And actually, if you look on the Durrell online thing that was done within the last couple of weeks, I had the pleasure of answering a very similar question to you, and I concentrated on the wind farm as well, and making the point about the hydro and the nuclear as well. So I shall stop there for everybody else's time, but our priority, I think, would be wind farm.
Thank you very much. Hilary Jeanne.
Absolutely, recognising that climate change is a real concern, and it's something that we really need to look at as an island as a whole, and also how we impact globally through our impact, like through the financial industries and through how we buy on the supply chain. So it's beyond this, but specifically on energy. As said already, we are purchasing green energy. The contract's up for renewal in 2027, so we must make sure that that contract still is as cheap as possible. We get electricity as cheap as possible, and that we have the same terms as we have now. But actually, what we need to talk about is energy sovereignty, and that is where the wind energy comes in and other renewable energies come in, is around the sovereignty issue. Wind seems to be the most economically viable, and something that actually means little investment from the government. More the government needs to provide an enabling environment, and there's something that we've talked about now with the bureaucracy, a heavy bureaucracy, so we need to make sure that that is reduced as much as possible, so we can have projects in renewable energy as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Thank you.
Yes, I'd just move on. I noticed there are a few architects in the room, and one of the things that I've seen come through, especially on planning, is to see the renewable energy with regards to the new developments. I have to say the dairy has done an excellent job of putting that into the dairy up into Trinity, and I went round it the other day, and I think that if we get the encouragement from architects and planners and that sort of thing, I think that we can also make sure people building houses, if it's big enough, that they can put these sort of things into the roofs, so that everything which is that they can use, and it helps everybody else. But it's going to take a long time. But it is refreshing to see that the plan, as I say, that the architects are getting involved in those sort of things and those sort of developments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary Venturini.
Planning is one of the obstacles. You can't put solar on your roof. You can't put a windmill at the bottom of your field if you have one. The rules and regulations are enormous, not just for ordinary residents, but for farmers as well. Trinity Manor Farm is still waiting for permission to put solar on its cowshed. It should have been able to put it on ages ago. Then we have other problems. We have tidal, which we should have used ages ago. It was turned down because it is supposed to pollute the environment. We have got to make sacrifices somewhere to get on with this. There is a climate emergency. Most people seem to have forgotten that, and we have got to use everything we possibly can to go ahead on this front. vehicles, we should be researching hydrogen, for example. Not just electric, but hydrogen. We haven't even started yet. We've just got to get on with this.
Thank you. Andy Howe.
Yes, I've talked to the Jersey Electricity Company, and their strategy is that they're hoping to build a wind farm in Jersey waters so they could provide some electricity for Jersey and also probably export it, if they can, to Europe. From our point of view, new homes are going to be, we should make sure they're really well insulated, that they have solar panels, that they have electric heat source pumps, that we should encourage generally everyone, if they can, to do active travel, to walk, to cycle, and just be mindful that we need all of us to do everything we can on an individual level to try. But I know it's hard. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Elaine Miller.
Well, I also agree with you that climate change is definitely a thing and that we need to take every action we can to try and address the current climate emergency. I think we do need to make sure we're making the best use of technology that we can. We investigated solar panels for our house about 10 years ago and we're told to put a heat pump on instead. So we need to be trying to support people to use what is best for their homes, whether that's heat pumps, solar panels, geothermal, whatever we can. Now, we have a problem that we will have lots of flats that we can't convert into heat pumps or solar panels, and they will not produce enough energy. But I think we need to be working with building companies to make sure that our homes are insulated, as Andy's just said, and that we do have renewable, sustainable sources of power. I think the other thing that's difficult is we do need to remember it's not just planning, that even a small wind turbine makes quite a lot of noise. And if someone wants to put a wind turbine in their garden, you could be certain that their neighbours may well be complaining about it. So we just need something that works for the island as a whole, and I completely support moving in that direction.
Thank you very much. Kirsten Morell.
Thank you. The question you've asked fascinates me because there's a truth here, and that is that renewable energy will not do much to reduce Jersey's carbon emissions. That's just a truth because most of our electricity is already almost carbon-free, and that's because of the connection with France. So actually, renewable energy is about energy security. It's not about reducing carbon emissions. To reduce carbon emissions, we need to get out of our cars, and where it is used for heating oil is our second largest producer of carbon emissions. So we need to cut down. Renewable energy can help there with the heating oil. But what we need is a renewable energy policy, because at the moment we don't have one, and that's sorely lacking. Because the issue is, if we all got solar panels on our roofs today, that would be wonderful. But it would also increase the price of electricity for everyone who can't afford solar panels on their roofs. Because suddenly, we would be getting free energy, and they would have to be paying JEC for all of their supplies. So we need to do this carefully and well, and we absolutely need to exploit our offshore resources as well. That's vitally important. So we've got to think it through and do it well, but we must get moving.
Okay, if we can go, where's Martin gone? Sorry. If we could just go up to the stage, the lady in the striped shirt, if that's all right. And then we'll only have time. Oh. Yeah, sure, of course. Sorry, the gentleman in the green T-shirt. We have only got just over a quarter of an hour left, so if we can keep the questions nice and brief, then we'll hopefully get through a few more.
With the panel here today, I would like to bring a proposition that the states should debate and get rid of 0-10, making companies come back and pay their taxes, like all of us in here have to do. The pensioners have to pay tax. We already paid tax before. So it's about time that 0-10 was abolished and bring back companies who are making money to pay their income tax over here on the profits that they make. Could anyone answer that for me, please? Thank you.
And we'll start with John LaFondre.
I like the easy questions. Principle of 0-10, it was, for want of a better expression, came through as a result of Europe looking at what they called unfair tax practices back in, and looking in the ordinance, I'm going to say, somewhere between 2000 and 2005. And 0-10 came out of it because everybody, essentially the common rate was 0. You've got to be very careful if you start messing around with that. Number one is you fall into consequences with Europe, and number two, you could really fundamentally mess up the financial services industry, which ultimately does pay for pretty well every service that we receive, including pensioners, including healthcare, including, for example, building the Kenway School. However, there is a change on the horizon because the OECD has put in what they're calling Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, which are various schemes around taxation. It is probable that will generate some additional revenue, and it will shift the emphasis and redesign of 010. I'm stopping there because that's 57 seconds.
Thank you very much. Hilary Jeune.
Thank you. It's a very complex question that you asked because, yes, we are a finance industry island, and therefore we need to be careful to make sure that we don't destroy that industry that is holding us up. But at the same time, I absolutely recognise that it is unfair, and there really does need to be a review of the corporation taxation. But I think that with the OECD Pillar 1, Pillar 2 that is coming in, by 2024, there are some companies in Jersey that will be substantially paying in their taxes. And that is something that actually I think the government should already be doing some calculations on. We know who those companies are through country-by-country reporting, so we can identify them, and we can make sure, and once we know how much money that we will be having, we can really look into our wider long-term tax planning and policy and really see where our revenue, where the revenue increases, and where we can be more fair. Also, just that already banks are increasing, the interests are increasing, so we also will be getting more interest in the coming few years, so we'll be getting more revenue through them as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Hugh Raymond, please.
Yes, I mean, I'm just following on. I mean, at last we're looking at it and in a big way, and I have to say that it's essential that we keep our finance industry, obviously, without any doubt. But there is much more looking into it. And if the next government comes in, it has to be the first thing it looks at, because I think with the things going on in Europe and everything else, it's going to affect whatever we do on the financial implications. The only thing I slightly worry about with inflation and, let's say, tax going up, we have to be very, very careful it doesn't affect many of us in this room in the sense that it's going to push our taxes up. I think there has to be a complete overlooking of where we stand with 010, with Europe, because there's big changes going on there purely because of Brexit. Although we're out of Brexit, I do desperately think they want us back because, unfortunately, Europe can't continue unless it has UK within it. But we have to make sure that we look after ourselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary Venturini.
I think that companies should pay tax. I think there's no question about it. And the bigger the company, the more international the company, the more tax that they should pay. I feel this very strongly. We may depend on the finance industry. I think in the future we should be depending rather less on the finance industry, and nor do I think it's a good idea that we should depend on it to the extent we're depending on it now. And yes, I would like to bring company tax in, perhaps at different rates for different companies, depending on their profits, but yes, it should come back, because it shouldn't all be on the private individuals.
I think this is a very complex question, and I think it has been very hard for Middle Jersey since 010 was introduced, because more of the tax burden has fallen on Middle Jersey's shoulders, and we've been having to be very careful. We haven't had as much to play with in Jersey, but I would need to take the advice of some very good people experts who live on Jersey, because I'm no tax expert, and I would want to ask their opinion as to the way forward, because we have got some really, really amazing people who work here, and I think for me I would have to ask them, because I'm not a great tax expert, but thank you.
Elaine Miller.
Yeah, I agree. I always thought when 010 came in, it had the capacity to operate quite unfairly for our local businesses. who were paying tax when other companies weren't. I think it did come in, as other people have said, to ensure that we complied with international tax obligations. It was to protect our financial services industry, and I think in particular to ensure that it could continue to compete effectively with other international jurisdictions, because we are very reliant on financial services, and we need to be careful that we don't inadvertently make changes to tax that harms the financial services industry. The OECD changes will make a difference in Jersey. It may make less of a difference because the OECD pillars, as I understand it, are affecting very, very big business. So they will have a limited impact in Jersey. But we need to make sure that we follow what the rest of the world are doing and evolve a fair tax system for Jersey. I think it definitely needs review now.
Thank you. Kirsten Morell.
Thank you. I said it at the beginning when we discussed population. If we want a stable population, if we want to ensure we don't need further population growth, then we need to change our tax system. We need to broaden it away from personal income tax. So yes, I completely agree. But in doing so, we need to protect the finance sector. And also, 010 does one brilliant thing for small businesses in Jersey. It means when you set up a small business in Jersey, you're not paying tax immediately as you're starting and you're trying to get going. So it encourages entrepreneurialism. So we need to make sure that any changes in diversifying our tax base away from personal income tax don't adversely affect the finance sector, but also don't stop entrepreneurialism, because there's already enough problems setting up your own business in Jersey without having tax thrown in on it. So it is about taxing those bigger companies. But don't forget, we already tax utilities, we already tax big retailers, we already tax medicinal cannabis companies. We have business taxes already. So we are part of the way there, but we need to go further.
Thank you very much. Gregory Guida.
Well, I'll just repeat a couple of things that have already been said. And basically, the first thing is, the most important one is that this was imposed upon us. It's not something that we chose to do. We had absolutely no choice. So we're living with it. And indeed, it does have some advantages in that our businesses are very, very fast and flexible. We do tax many of them. There are many businesses that pay 20% tax. And of course, the finance industry pays 10% tax. So it's not completely, it's not that transparent. One of our biggest challenges will be to wean ourselves of finance. And we have to do that without hurting finance. We need to live from it while we go. And the best place for Jersey is technology and science. It's something that we can do as a small community. We're not going to build cars in Jersey, but we already have some small companies that are world-class, and we could have many more. So it's something that we are developing already.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we probably have time for maybe one quick one left.
The lady up there said she...
Yes, we'll come back to you with your striped shirt, please.
Okay. In each of, I'm St. John's resident, in each of the manifestos, housing is the theme, and shortage of housing is a problem, obviously. Does the panel, or rather the candidates, do they think that building on green fields in villages, 5 houses there, 10 here, 11 there, and, you know, ticking up boxes and adding numbers in parishes, small parishes like St. John, do they think that that will solve or even begin to solve housing crisis? And I would like to hear more about how each of you actually propose to go about shortage of housing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll go back to Hilary first.
Thank you. I think housing, absolutely, I agree. It shouldn't be built here or there on greenfields. I think housing needs to be done as a community plan, where you're also thinking about local amenities, public open space, community facilities, and alternative transport options. I live in Zion. I've seen absolutely what this is happening and potentially will happen, where we have a few fields that now have been designated to be built on. Okay. But where is our heart? Where is the community? And that is something that I really want to push, and pushing through the committee Rural, that we need to have a community plan so we don't just keep expanding and building on these fields as urban sprawl outwards, out of Zion, because I've seen this throughout my life. So it's really important. So where I think that should be is there should be more state-owned sites being designated specifically for affordable housing. So we have more of those houses that have been designated to be built as affordable housing, and that should be start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hugh Raymond.
Yes, I'd continue with that. I said at the St. Lawrence Hustings the other day that I drove from Trinity through Trinity through St. Johnstone to St. Lawrence. There's no big houses. It was pleasant to drive through the middle. We've got to make sure that we keep that. And I think that we also have to make sure that we provide facilities for our youngsters who live in the parishes, who may well be coming back from the UK. But I think it has to be a corporate idea of everybody getting together on this, because I say that we're one of the fortunate ones in the northern part of this island that has good green fields, cows, and everything you want to see. We've got to keep that. And we've got to make sure that we also are party to where they build the houses. And the other thing is absolutely right. We do need a centre for each of our parishes, and that's one thing that we must all work towards, because that's what keeps the parishes going. We don't want to become a St. Helier with 45,000 people in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary Venturini.
I hate to single out St. John's here, but I do think St. John's in the last 30 years has had, maybe even 40 years, has had a very, very good record about planning around the village. Zion, I'm afraid, is further away, but if you look at St. John's here, it has got a very, very good plan. It's got its school, it's got its parish church, it's got its parish hall, it's got its shops, and it has its designated housing. And there is another bit that is being developed at the moment on the other side of the school. And I think it has probably one of the best records in the island. It is one of the parishes that has a real centre and a real feel. And I think this should be used as an example for other parishes. And I would very much support this as long as there is community consultation at every level about how this should be done.
Thank you very much.
I would really like to use government-owned sites and empty properties in the first instance. I would like to add dower sort of house-type additions to homes that can happen to, because I'm aware that there are young people in St. John's, especially, who are really looking forward to the houses that is going to be developed. But equally, I know that there's a tension between other people who don't want the houses, and it's a really fine balance. But I think we just have to go forward mindful of both sides of the equation. And if we can use government, keep our green fields, as long as I think those are what make Jersey special, and I really want to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Elaine Miller.
As a matter of principle, I don't agree with building on green fields, and I think we should avoid that as much as we possibly can. We hear a lot at the moment about the issues with food security, with the war in Ukraine, and I think this is the very last moment that we should be starting giving up fields that can be used for food production. I think that's really important. Sounds a bit dramatic, but I think that is something we really need to think about. What I've said in my manifesto is that we should support the parishes, and if the parishes, I think St. John has done a lot of work on housing, in creating developments that fit the community. I think if the parishes come up with a plan that suits the parish, then planning and everybody else should be throwing their weight behind getting those developments built to help the parishes. But again, I support building on brownfield sites, releasing empty government property, and trying to get vacant properties back into use rather than build on green fields.
Thank you. Kirsten Morel.
Thank you. Yeah, the government, we talked earlier about the Bridging Island Plan and not having the population policy. The government also got it wrong because the government hadn't done its homework. It jumped to, let's rezone some green fields, but without checking how many unused homes are there. How many brownfield sites are we not using properly? How many glasshouse sites are we not using properly? How many state-owned sites are we not using properly? It didn't answer any of those questions. And so, quite rightly, and I was really pleased about this, in the main, 90% of the greenfield sites that were asked to be rezoned, the state's rejected. And it's because the government had not done its homework. And so for me, it's simple. There's a hierarchy. You use green fields in the last resort, because once they're gone forever. So you use what has already been changed first. We know there are 4,000 empty homes. Now, not all of them can be used, but even if 1,000 of those could be used, well, we're told that we need 7,000 homes. Well, you've just got rid of 1,000. Now we need 6,000 homes, and so on. So, no, greenfields are the last resort. Absolutely. There's no question in my mind. Go through that hierarchy first.
Thank you. Gregory Guida.
Well, it's a little bit annoying because I'm the one who knows the most about what has been done since I participated intensely at making the island plan. But everybody seems to know more. First thing, it's those empty homes. Now, could anybody who lives next to an empty home raise their hand now? No, go ahead, lift your hand. So completely empty home, nobody lives in it. Nobody's ever been in it. There are no, yes, sorry, there are no such there are not 4,000 empty homes in Jersey. It's about 150. Yeah. Sorry?
What about all the empty houses down St Saviour's Road? There's quite a few down around there.
Well, that's going to be difficult. Anyway, when we created the island plan, we actually, the problem with the housing crisis is that not everybody wants to live in town in a one-bedroom flat. And the government sites are town sites where you build large buildings with one bedroom. You need to have a diversified demand, which includes 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom houses. And we got the best possible sites in the island. And one of the things that we did look at was local amenities. We tried to think in terms of reviving the centre of the parishes.
I'm sorry.
Has your shop just disappeared because
Sorry,
there's not enough
Mr. Guida,
people?
you've run over your time. Sorry, quite
No,
a lot. Sorry. I'm sure you can continue this conversation after we finish. We are very short on time, so.
Come and talk to us, did you? Just
Can we just finish off this
It was
question
not
just with
outside.
John Lafondre, please? Sorry.
It was not outside.
John Lafondre, your response, please.
Okay, I think the question was, do we think building a ground-floor sites will solve the housing crisis? Short answer is no. We've got a serious volume of houses. I think it's 4,000, not 7,000 in terms of the empty houses, of which I think roughly half are either for sale or tenants changing. So in other words, start rolling those numbers down. It is not a panacea. The greenfield sites, some of those actually were brought by the Connotabs for on a community basis with the backing of the parish. But actually what you need is volume. The volumes will be, as we said, waterfront 1,000 units. Ports have got a scheme between 500 and 1,000 units. In terms of levels of frustration, you're looking at me. 12 years ago, and some people know the story, I was trying to get the Office of State Strategy sorted. It was going to save us £10 million a year and release brownfield sites. It got blocked by certain politicians and certain officials. It's being implemented. It will start having effect in 2024 because of decisions we've taken in these 4 years. That's about unlocking things. The hospital estate strategy we need to do, St Saviour's Hospital needs to be released, the Kenilworth School, and then finally the educational estate strategy will all add in, and that will be the final solutions it will do. Finally, you'll have to bite the bullet and go slightly higher. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you there. We have run out of time. We've gone a couple of minutes over, and it has gotten very warm in here. So, first of all, can I just say thank you all for coming out and your excellent questions. That was a real great variety of subjects to hear from. And thank you all for our candidates as well for coming out and participating. And if we could have a quick round of applause as well for Martin on the microphone and Sue, our excellent timekeeper. Okay, well, just briefly, I hope that tonight has helped bring some clarity to your decisions ahead of Election Day. Election Day is the 22nd of June, a Wednesday, so depending on where you live, you're going to be asked either to vote here in St John's Parish Hall, St Lawrence Parish Hall, or at Trinity Youth Centre. If you register for a postal vote, I believe that should be appearing through your letterbox any day now. And you also have the option to vote in the pre-poll voting at St Paul's Centre. That's in St Helier from the 13th to the 17th of June. So if you're not around on election day or you haven't registered for your postal voting time, you can still go and vote in person there. Just remember when you're voting in person to take photo ID with you. And finally, just a note for St John's voters. While we only have one candidate standing for the parish constable, so there isn't necessarily a hustings in the sort of traditional sense, but Constable Andy Jayon will join me here on Thursday night for a brief interview, and then he'll be taking questions from the audience as well. So if you're able to join us for that and want to hear what his plans for the parish are should he get elected, then please come down and, bend his ear. That'd be great. Okay, fantastic. Once again, thank you all very, very much.
Can I just also thank you for hosting the evening so well? Thank you.
Thank you very much.